Haven is Human Animal Violence Education Network, and we're a coalition of professionals within Berkshire County. All of us service families in one way or another.
It's a committee, actually, of various agencies throughout Berkshire County.
We might have humane societies involved.
Veterinarians,
animal control agencies, animal shelters,
police officers,
Kids Place,
advocates for our elders, as well as
the Department of Children and Families,
Berkshire Center for Families and Children.
the District Attorney's Office come and sit at the table at our meetings on a regular basis.
So we have people who work with four-legged animals and two-legged animals. And what we're trying to do is raise awareness about the connection between animal cruelty and violence, to try to educate our community that violence is violence, and that we need to be taking animal cruelty seriously, and that there's the potential that if we could intervene early as far as some violent acts, that we may be able to prevent some more serious violence in the future. I became aware of the connection between animal cruelty and interpersonal violence by the experiences that I had had as a clinician and also the ones at animal shelters, but also the Humane Society of the United States and the American Humane Association. There were organizations that were educating us about it.
What we're going to talk about today is the connection between animal cruelty and violence, and the fact that we live in a society that tends to be extremely violent. We all know that, right? But one of the things historically is we have not taken seriously people who abuse animals.
the prevalence of domestic violence and animal cruelty does go hand in hand. Whether or not we see it is dependent greatly upon whether or not the investigators and the victims recognize the interrelationship between animal cruelty and human violence.
So if you're the neighbor, you're the teacher, and you're having a conversation with a child and you ask a child about animals and that child tells you about abuse toward an animal or the disappearance of multiple animals, that is something that you need to be thinking about and recognizing. They may not be telling you about the other abuse in the home because they may know that that's something they're not supposed to talk about. But 88% of the time, there's animal abuse. And it may be that animal abuse is all you're going to see.
801. My name is Joseph Shaggy. I am the City of Pittsfield's Animal Control Officer, and I have an awful lot of support of the police department. They take animal control issues the department has very seriously.
Animal cruelty, animal neglect, and animal abuse issues are almost always indicative of some other problem, whether it be child abuse, drug trafficking. And so by having a strong relationship between my law enforcement side, my police officers, and my animal control side, if we can't get in there any other way, we can always get in there on an animal call. And we've had remarkable success.
If you see animal cruelty or serious animal neglect, as Chief Wynn said, that is a red flag. We are no longer in the days of, oh, boys will be boys, oh, it's just a cat, what's the big deal? Because the reality is that is indicative of potentially some serious other violence or problems going on in the family.
As a prosecutor, I have come across violence against animals primarily in two contexts. First and foremost, cases involving animal cruelty, where animals have either been starved or injured or killed. With regard to domestic violence, I've seen cases throughout the years where the animal of the victim, the person who's being abused, is used by the perpetrator or the defendant to control further the victim.
Domestic violence doesn't just affect the person that it's perpetrated against. It affects an entire household. So it can affect the children, it can affect the pets in the home.
Many times we've seen a direct link between a domestic violence case. The party is lashing out at the pet owner Well, if I'm not going to hurt you, I'm going to hurt your animal. I'm going to get back at you. I'm going to get even with you. And they use that as a hostage, I call it a hostage situation, where the other party just doesn't know what to do.
I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I've lost 2 animals to abuse, and they were brutally killed. When I went to the court to get a no abuse order, because we were still living together as a family at that time, I realized that I could put my possessions, I could put my television set on the restraining order, but I couldn't put Yasa and Rose. And Yasa was my beagle, and Rose was my tabby cat, which I had had even before my relationship with my husband. I had gotten a no abuse order without the animals on. And when he found out that I had gone to the courts, he was furious. He also said that if Natasha, our daughter, and I ever left, he'd make sure that we couldn't have Yasa and Rose and take them with us. And so I stayed, not wanting to leave them behind. And so one day when I was out and Natasha was at school, he went home and he beheaded Yasa and Rose, and he left the bodies of the animals in my bed where I could see them, and left the heads in the bathtub, and left a note that this is what will happen to you if you leave.
It's clearly documented that animal owners or pet owners who display violence against their animals also may display a propensity for violence against their spouses or their children or other people in the community.
Someone who is significantly cruel to animals is 5 times more likely to be a violent criminal, 4 times more likely to be involved in property crime, and 3 times more likely to be involved in drunk and disorderly crime.
Domestic violence is an issue of power and control, and there's a pattern of power and control.
We go to different community groups and try to train people and heighten people's awareness about this connection.
With our victims, things that we sometimes discuss as well.
I'm just wondering, you guys work with domestic violence situations. Have you had any situation where someone's told you that a pet's been threatened?
Absolutely.
Abusers will use whatever tactic they can to try to control, to exert power over their partners, their children, their household.
Of the women who were seeking shelter, of the ones that had pets in the last year, the partner had threatened or killed a pet 71% of the time.
To be the victim of violence is horrible. To witness violence and to feel helpless is also horrible. It's just devastating. Violence is devastating.
As a practicing veterinarian, I became more aware of the fact that we are very much family clinicians. We're family practitioners, and so we can sometimes recognize things in families that someone else may not see. So I've seen cases of animals that have been abused, animals that have been seriously neglected, and generally it wasn't just the pet that was in trouble in the family. There were usually children that were having a hard time, or the mother was also having a hard time.
Children who witness domestic violence learn from what they see that is the normal way to behave. And so anecdotally, we see many young boys, many young men, many older men who are in abusive relationships and have grown up that way. And so they don't know any different. And oftentimes young women will also get into an abusive relationship because this is what seems to be the norm. That's what they've grown up with.
A violent child is generally living in a violent household, and that the violence to the animal is usually happening at the same time as the violence to people.
We spend a lot of time working with kids on hands are not for hurting, hands are not for hitting. And so it's important piece of that to teach children that we need to keep our animals safe, and that's a good starting point.
Humane education is a very large part of any education program when it comes to violence or children or pet care. And so the collaborator that's involved with Haven who does humane education is the Berkshire Humane Society. So they go into schools where we talk about compassion and empathy toward animals.
It's your tone of voice that you use with your animals. That's really important. It's positive reinforcement. And that's how it works to have a great puppy.
We go over what you have to do for your pets, and then what your pets can do for you, how good they can make you feel.
Food. What else do we need to give them? So teeth, nails, ears, coat, pretty much what we do for ourselves, right?
I ask them to talk about a pet in their lives. And this can be a little upsetting sometimes because I do hear about dogs that ran into the road and were hit, or I've actually encountered children who have said that, you know, my dad has hit my dog or something.
He was like really bad, and he used to hit the dog, and he comes then, and I would like really have to like put it like line around.
By incorporating a kind of sharing session, we learn more about it. The teacher sees it, I see it, and even the classmates, you know, just know that you're not alone. If you feel frustrated or something, you have resources, and I think that's important, that children know we're here to listen.
Knowing that there's agencies like the Berkshire Humane Society and the Safe Pet program is a great resource for families that are trying to rebuild their lives and get stronger.
We live in a rural community. There are people with horses and goats and cows, and they just can't up and leave to keep themselves and their children safe. We will foster the pets of people leaving domestic violence situations so that eliminates one obstacle at least that would prevent them from leaving.
Okay, Missy, let's get a look at Scabbers and see. He just was brought here, so we need to make sure he's okay before he goes to his foster home. I understand there's 2 other cats that went to a home already, so. We are available 24 hours a day to, on an emergency basis, take in an animal. 2 or 3, maybe 2. That allows us to examine, take care of the animal, and then organizations like the Berkshire Humane Society and some others start working on setting up a longer-term foster care. There's some scabs.
We started this one well over a week ago, and then it was kind of put on a hold situation, and then it became actually an emergency again on Friday.
There you go. Oh, that sounds great. Excellent. Well, Scabbers, I think you look pretty darn healthy, other than your wounds. Oh, you didn't like that. Other than those wounds, which I think are healing up.
What I find amazing about having this whole foster safe pet program is that even if an animal, mainly dogs I'm thinking of, even if they've been in shelter or, you know, a foster home for months, and I mean months on a time, when they come back to here, to this room, and I've arranged for the foster caregiver to be here, and I try and give them a little bit of time to say goodbye to the animal, and then I've got the owner coming back in. I am just amazed at how those pets within a second will remember their owner, and it's most, we do a lot of crying here. It's happy tears because we know we have truly helped the family, and the animal remembers them, and they've got a better place to go to now.
So it's important for all professionals that deal with people who are victims of violence, no matter who they may be or what group they represent, to understand the connection between animal cruelty and violence against people for purposes of lethality, for purposes of treatment, for purposes of referral.
what you know.